I'm Giovanna Sardelli, Artistic Associate and Director of New Works for TheaterWorks Silicon Valley. And I want to begin by acknowledging that TheaterWorks offices and theaters are on the traditional territory of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. And I want to thank you for tuning in to our conversation with Dan Wolfe and Sean San Jose. So Dan Wolfe is a multi-talented, multi-hyphenate hip-hop artist who conceived of the idea of a currency and who is one of the writers and performers of the project. He also co-founded Bay Area Theater Cipher. And Sean San Jose is another multi-talented, multi-hyphenate artist, co-founder of Camposanto, a new performance company for peoples of color in San Francisco. And he's helping to develop currency, and he's the director of the piece. So I want to jump right in, Dan, and I want to know what inspired you to take on The Merchant of Venice, because it's a tricky one, viewed as many, if not most, people as anti-Semitic. And so I'm curious just what drew you to that story.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me here to talk about currency. So first of all, I mean, I'm a Jewish kid who grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust. Both my sets of grandparents are survivors, and I have spent the last 20 plus years of my life working with Jewish and non-Jewish people, really, at places of conscience, mainly concentration camp memorial sites and in downtowns of cities, mostly in Europe, utilizing the history of the Second World War as a prompt to connect young people and older people to history. And as our world has become increasingly more and more dangerous, really, to create a space for the future for all people. So, I mean, I feel like Merchant of Venice and currency and this project is really just an extension of that work. And it's a trajectory of all of that time that I've spent as an MC, as an actor, as a kind of avid fan of history, as a connector of cultures and of peoples through art. So I think that currency really becomes a conduit for all that work. I was initially drawn, obviously, to the character of Shylock because, as an actor, as a young actor, I studied Shakespeare and loved Shakespeare in high school and in college. And as I was looking for myself, Shylock became a reflection of myself in a world, that doesn't always reflect who I am. So I think it's really important to tackle the hard work. And so I really looked at the relationship between Shylock and the merchants. That was really what interested me about the project at first. And I mean, there is anti-Semitism in the world. There is racism in the world. There is xenophobia and transphobia and homophobia and anti-Asian sentiment and violence and anti-Black sentiment and violence. So in reading that play, I don't just see that story of the Jewish people alone. I see the story of all oppressed folks, all just what the gears of capitalism does to, immigrant communities.
Dan's work very much comes from a lineage from his grandparents. His grandparents are storytellers. Jewish, German storytellers, survivors of a deadly Holocaust. So I think that's in all of his work, whether it's a rap about Berkeley today, whether it's a story about for him and his band, whether it's a solo piece. So it's always in there. So this idea that we would be engaging in Merchant of Venice was immediately about finding out the problematics in it and then embracing the messiness and trying to figure it out anew for today. I mean, that's what we do. That's what new work is all about, is trying to grapple with questions and problems of today. And the fact that Dan wanted to approach it through this long viewfinder of Shakespeare, through this very well-known character of Shylock, was fascinating.
It is fascinating. I did not know you, Dan, before I heard tale of this currency project. I think it was 2019, and we invited you into the TheaterWorks offices. You brought along some of the awesome people who are still involved, and we sat around a conference table, and you read what was then what seemed to me to be a completed draft of what I'm going to say was a fairly linear retelling, reframing of the story. And even though it wasn't finished really, we were so excited by what you were doing and the reasons why you were doing it that we invited you to be part of a theater festival. That then didn't happen because of a global pandemic. But also, in that time, you scrapped that story and you decided to transform your entire approach. And I'm just wondering if you can tell me about the journey of that decision.
So really, I mean, I started out to write a bunch of songs that would rap songs that would tell the story of Merchant. I started in 2016, right after the election. I have a daughter, and I was like, what are we dudes doing by taking up so much air and so much breath in the room? I'm going to move out of the way, and I'm going to create a piece, and I'm going to invite it to be an all-female cast. And then it started to, we were reading it, and it started to feel inauthentic, right? There's nothing in the piece that says it has to be all females. And then I started feeling like that was like a imposed choice on top of it, as opposed to something that the piece was really trying to speak, right? So then I'm like, all right, it's such a can of worms. You've got these different, it's technically a comedy because of the marriage at the end. So you have all this Shakespearean kind of BS wrap up fake love stories so that there can be a wedding at the end of the play. Yet the meat of the play is this like completely destructive situation where a really essential person makes a deal with someone who hates him but needs him, and then they just destroy him. They say they're going to kill him. They say they make him convert. They make him give half of his money to his daughter who betrayed him, the other half to the merchant who betrayed him. It's just like, it's the worst of all situations here. So all of this stuff is swirling in my brain, and I'm like, okay, there's a bigger story here that I need to uncover. I know it's there. And in reading it right before we kind of came in to meet with you all, I really had realized that the development I had done was actually the end of phase 1 of the project. And for phase 2 to happen, it really needed to be cracked wide open. It needed to be written by folks who have experiences that are like Venn diagram, but also not at all connected, whose stories are similar and whose struggles are similar and whose struggles are unresolved and who are fighting for their freedom in this present moment. We need to create a space where like we come together, we, in a sense, like curate a group of performers who can write the piece together and perform their own pieces.
So Dan and I basically, we framed out in a storyboard kind of fashion. Here's the theme. Here's what action should lead to the next action, to the next action. And then we tried it out with the people that we have and said, and what if you told this story and it was vaguely in this world and you were a person like this and everything is caught fire. So you have 6 people in the room who know each other, who vibe with each other, who trust each other more than anything. And the people we have are, I mean, the key is that they're open. The gold is that they're dope. So like at the end of the day, it might be a mess and it might not work, but it's going to be dope. It's going to be entertaining. So that part is, that's a joy because as you know, Giovanna, you've been in enough labs, workshops, readings, trials, and errors to know like it's not always dope. But with these people, it's going to be dope.
Yeah, I think that examination of the truth, that exploration to get to the heart of the truth and the ridiculous amount of talent surrounding the project is what made us at TheaterWorks say, yeah, we want to support this. Even though we're not quite sure what it is, what it will be, we know who's doing the exploration. And then, of course, that expands to Playwrights Foundation and Jessica Bird-Beza and the people saying, yes, this is worthy and worthwhile. So I get excited every time I know I'm going to see another piece revealed. I also have to circle back for those who may not be as cool as you are to say, can you tell us what a cipher is?
If you're ciphering up for a rap cipher where everyone gonna rap. When you're in the cipher, you're telling a story, but we're all telling one story because it's a circle. And the circle is the cipher, and the cipher is a circle, and it's all one. Is the zero is the one, and so we're all telling one story. And if I keep talking about numbers, then it will make no sense at all to anyone, and everyone will just nod their heads and come to the reading and go, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah."
The cipher also is the space where you spit ideas and you share. You compete and share ideas over topics that are passionate and powerful for you, and we freestyle in ciphers. We stand in circles and we rap, we freestyle, we tell our stories. We want to create a space where the people who don't feel safe in our field, in our world, can feel safe, can feel trust, can tell their story in any way that they want to tell without editing, without fear of repercussion. They can just speak from their truth, and it can be supported and it can be seen as important and central, and it can give power and confidence where sometimes there isn't any.
Thank you. Now we're all cool. So what you worked on this time around is part 2 of something you're envisioning as 3 parts. And what would you say now was the exploration of part 1, which you worked on as part of our writers retreat in January? What are you cracking open in part 2? And do you know yet what part 3 would entail?
First piece was really, it's titled, welcome to the Rialto currency, welcome to the Rialto. So it was really an introduction. It was an exploration of, if we put Merchant of Venice, if we put Il Rialto in all the mouths of our 5 merchants, as they tried to understand what transaction they were in the midst of, who was buying what and who was selling what, kind of as a welcome into our world. Like, I don't know if that's what we intended, but that's what we recognized happened with that first piece, which was really fortuitous in terms of like creating a structure. And then, this is the second piece, this is the second part. We mention a character that's not in the piece, but we tell a story about Rodrigo Lopez, who, for my Shakespeare nerds, is the guy that they say, Shylock is modeled after. But we tell his story in our world, or Shylock tells his story in our world, I think in that moment as a cautionary tale. But there's something really beautiful dramatically about his arc, even though it's an awful story. Part 2 very much is, it's called Buyer Beware. It's a transaction happens and we see it played out kind of throughout the 5 corners of the world that we've created.
That was the approach for this, is to create a world of Shylocks, which is to say, to create the world of the underdog, to create the world of the worker, to create the world of the immigrant, to create the world where we are the pushers of the commerce, but we are the constantly the dogs. We are under the power. We have no power. It's like the end of the Shakespeare play. You take this, in essence, you take this from me, you have taken my life. And so we're trying to look at a whole world of that. We've taken the Shakespeare and we've shrunk it down to like 2 component pieces that Dan really responded to. And then we've filled in that world with a cast of 5 stories.
So yeah, and then I don't know, part 3 is hopefully as our world becomes more connected, hopefully we can develop part 3 together in a space.
This part will take us to the sort of, in terms of action, the high point of action in the story. So it's cool. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Whenever I hear you talk about the piece, I get more excited by what you're doing and how you're doing it. So I have one more question. So because you're also amazingly talented at your video production, when you presented part 1 in our retreat, I think there were assumptions that you were done. But as we've learned from the conversation today, you're actually in the early stages of your process and exploration in some ways. So can you set up the presentation and help us understand what it is we will be seeing?
My thing is like, what are you going to see? You have to see it, because you're going to read a thing that says Merchant of Venice and it's by a hip hop cipher, you'd be like, oh, some rap thing of Merchant of Venice. Not really, but kind of, you know what I mean? So it's everything. It's like any burgeoning aesthetic. It's the confluence of what's happening out here. So yeah, it's sung and it's filmed and it's absolutely text and it's Shakespeare in there too. It's all of the things, and we don't know what it is because it's still new, it's still forming, and that's the exciting part, and that's the gift of getting to be part of something like this, is that there is a forum where we not only are afforded the time to work on something like this, but we have the opportunity to share it, because we can spend forever just labbing on it and rapping about how much we enjoy it for each other, but it's nothing until you put it out in the world. And even in a pandemic, even in shelter in place, we have to put it out in the world in some form.
Yeah. I mean, I think quite literally, like, what we're presenting, even though they look good, is the demo tape, right? So we have songs, we have videos, we have monologues, we have arcs of stories. So it's all, what you're just seeing is you're getting to see the script as a storyboard moving across your eyes with beautiful colors and beautiful people. In watching it, I love how it looks. I also know that, like, this isn't the final filmed version of the thing. In my mind, this piece gets finished in these videos. We spend some time adapting to what it looks like on stage in a live in-person environment. Maybe it's on stage plus streaming, maybe definitely video and music on stage. Like, what if the totality of the project is the breadth of it? You know, it's not, it is a film, it is music videos, it is a play, you know, it's an I don't know, there's so much to kind of explore.
Well, we're glad we could support you with this in partnership with Playwrights Foundation and Bay Area Theater Cipher. And tell people, when can they check this out?
April 24th is the Saturday. That's the New Works Festival. Again, and we'll be screening both parts 1 and 2, just to give the audience a cumulative experience.
Fantastic. So we're putting the information up on the screen so that you can go to our website and check out the entire festival, and make sure you tune into Currency on Saturday, the 24th at 2 p.m. And thank you both for spending this time with me. We're so curious about what's next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Giovanna, and on behalf of Theater Work and Playwrights Foundation for letting new work and new audiences and new communications happen.